My dear friends, we have heard of so many operations, and we have heard of so many transplants, surgeries, wherein a kidney is transplanted. And we have also heard something called heart transplant, wherein a heart is transplanted. And when it is transplanted, you don't put a lower quality heart in the recipient's body. The donor's heart should be of good quality. I mean to say, a healthy one. And that is why, my friends, today's readings or liturgy, God is doing a kind of a heart and mind transplant. And why I say this, you go to the first reading. Now Moses was brought in an aristocratic family in Egypt, Pharaoh's palace. And when he comes to see the burning bush, he goes with his sandals. Great spiritual classics like written by Gregory of Nyssa will say, having sandals means you show some kind of control. We all wear sandals. And when we wear sandals, we have control. If we are barefooted, then we might hurt ourselves. So that's why in terrains like, rough terrains, you wear sandals. Why? Because you have control. If you are barefoot, then you might hurt yourself. And that is why, Moses goes to see the burning bush, but he goes with his sandals. Yes, some scholars will say this ground is holy, and that is why he wanted to remove the sandals. But more spiritual writers will say, having sandals shows your control. And when you want to have this divine encounter, this burning bush encounter, this God encounter, you have to remove your sandals. Meaning what? You have to give total control to God. And that is why I said a transplant. When you go under knife, when you do operation on you, you don't have control over yourself. You are flat on the operation theater, on the table. And doctor takes control. You give whole control to the doctor to do what is necessary. My dear friends, what it shows, you are vulnerable, you are open. And that is why when you want a spiritual heart transplant, when you want a spiritual mind transplant, you have to allow yourself on the operation table of God. Like Moses went with the sandals, we might also go with the sandals, meaning our own control. I give everything, but this thing I want to hold on. God says, leave everything. I know what is good for you. You read Ezekiel chapter 11 verse 19, where he says, I will give you a new heart. I will remove the heart of stone and will give you a heart of flesh, so that you obey my commandments, and you will be my people and I will be your God. My dear friends, today we require this spiritual heart transplant. A disciple went to a master. He asked, Master, can you show me? I want to be like you. I want to follow you. And while talking, the master starts pouring tea in the cup. And as they were talking, the tea spills onto the table. And the disciple tells the master, he draws his attention, Master, your tea is spilling out. And then the master says, yes, you see, when your cup is full, nothing can be added. You need to empty yourself. And that is what is required in spiritual heart transplant. Moses had something in mind. Maybe he was brought up in that aristocratic, in this Pharaoh's culture. God said, leave that. We might be boasting about our intellectual capacities. I as a priest might be boasting, I know theology. God says, leave that, leave your sandals, come to me, give the control to me. My friends, the biggest theologian, one of the biggest theologian, famous theologian, Thomas Aquinas. He wrote so many things. And his great was Summa Theologica. And towards the end, when he was about to finish, he had this divine mystical experience. And at the deathbed, he points to all his writings, all the corpus, what he has written. He points that and says, all that what I have written is straw, is hay, is grass before the divine experience. And that is why he says, non nisite Domini. I don't want anything, I want you, Lord. That's a famous Latin word that used, non nisite Domini. My dear friends, in the world you want to chase something, you want to run, you want to have the control. But in spiritual realm, when you want to have divine experience, you don't have to run, you have to rest. And that is why Augustine says, our hearts are restless until they rest in God. He meant to say our hearts are restless until we transplant our hearts and get a heart of God. You can say our studies will be restless until we have a transplant of this new heart, new mind. Our ministry as a priest will be restless until I transplant a new heart, a new mind. You call anything, your family life will be restless until you rest in God. There's a beautiful hymn, I will end up with that. Put a little more of Jesus and the world will be a happy place. I would say, put a little transplant of Jesus' heart, Jesus' mind, and you'll see your life will be beautiful. Put a little of Jesus' heart and mind, and you'll see your community, your family, your school will be beautiful. Put a little more of Jesus, the world will be a happy place. You see in the gospel, Jesus says these mysteries are not explained to educated people, but to children, little children, because they are humble, they are dependent. And that is what God asked, be dependent, Moses. Don't be dependent by putting sandals. Don't take control. Like little children's, let us also be dependent before God. Let us read today Philippians chapter 2, verse 6 to 11. That's a beautiful hymn where we can do real transplant, spiritual heart transplant, where it says Jesus, being God, he became slave, dependent to God, obedient to death, death unto cross. Obedience. When you are little children, you are dependent. So when you are dependent, you can have this beautiful encounter. This burning bush, we don't have to climb the hills. We don't have to climb places like Moses did. Burning bush will come at the altar. That's the biggest encounter we can have. Let us remove our sandals. Let us give control to God. Let us not hold on to our small powers. Let us ask Jesus, I want in this Eucharistic celebration a real spiritual and mind transplant. Amen.